number 2 most important story of 2019 as we wrap up 2019 and go into 2020. We've been counting down my thoughts on what I'm calling the 7 most important underreported or ignored stories by both mainstream and independent media. And you can find all those on the YouTube channel and BitChute and everywhere else if you haven't checked that out yet. Before we get into today's video, though, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. I've been saying this a lot, guys. I try to say it every video, but I'm really trying to emphasize to you that going into 2020, I will be using social media less and less. And maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot, but I'm trying to trust that you guys have the ability to visit my website. And if you care about my content, if the market for my work is strong, then you guys will come visit me. And if not, then I guess my work is not valued that much, and just, that's what it is. But I really want to recommend you guys bookmark theconsciousresistance.com to make sure you get all of our latest content. Of course, you can follow us on all of our alternative social media platforms, Minds, Steemit/DTube. You can join our Discord channel. Lots of discussion there, and of course you can sign up for our text list right here on Remind, and of course use BitChute if you want to get our videos. And finally, if you want to support, please do so via Patreon or Subscribestar, because that's how I keep going. Alright guys, so let's get into it. The number 2 most important story of 2019 is the false flag exposed by independent media. The false flag being exposed from Syria. Yes, we've been covering this recently. Those of you who've been following, you've seen the videos. Lately, we've been talking about Douma, Syria, where we were told that in Douma, Syria, in April 2018, there was a gas attack by Bashar al-Assad, president of Syria. And this has been extremely ignored by the mainstream. There's only been, I think, 1 or 2 outlets that even bothered touching it, and all they did was claim that it wasn't true. So, to recap, for those who haven't seen the previous videos, the ones I'm showing you on the screen, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is an international body that is supposed to be tasked with going out and looking at alleged chemical weapons uses, doing reports, and then reporting back to the public. Now, obviously, this organization is being used as a tool for the Western nations, for the Western NATO, the Israel, the UK, and the US faction against the Syria, Russia, etc. faction. And the lies were kind of obvious in the beginning. I will say, this is the Douma attack, right? We've been told, though, since 2013 that there have been at least half a dozen chemical attacks on the Syrian people by Bashar al-Assad, and the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was involved in, if not all of those reports, I think most of those reports. So the reason they don't want to talk about this, the reason this is one of the most ignored stories, is because they know that if you call into question one event, then the other events might also be called into question. And what does that do? Well, that undermines their whole push for war. And again, I have to remind everyone who has trouble accepting this that after we were told in April 2018 that there was a chemical gas attack, within days, both parties, bipartisan support that some of you guys think are so different. Y'all think the Republicans are the answer, the Democrats are the answer. They're not different. And they gave bipartisan approval to Donald Trump dropping bombs, 100 Tomahawk missiles, on Syria, based on what we know is a lie. And they didn't even wait at the time to get the evidence. They just said, oh, gas attack, people, children, people are dying, we got to do this. It's the same old false flag bullshit. So we've been covering this recently. This was just a couple of weeks ago when the OPCW whistleblower came out. Now, we've been hearing whispers of a whistleblower for a while, but now we're getting people come out more openly, and it's just completely destroying their narrative. And then we had former Newsweek journalist Tarak Haddad, who, as I showed you guys here, he tried to speak up and write about it, and then he resigned very publicly from Newsweek after they basically called him a conspiracy theorist and told him he couldn't write an article about the whole situation, about the whistleblower, and about the leaks which are coming from WikiLeaks. And so what does he do? Well, he ends up quitting, and we got an interview with him, a pretty good interview. If you guys haven't seen this interview, seriously, it's about an hour long, but I really, really recommend checking out this interview because he exposes the military-industrial complex's control over mainstream Newsweek editors as well as other publications. And he also discusses how there's a former spy, a double FBI agent, working in Newsweek, much like we found out in the 60s and the 70s during, what is known as Project Mockingbird or Operation Mockingbird. Whatever it's called, we do know that the intelligence agencies have been working hand in hand with media for decades, for years. And Tarak exposes that even further, and how this guy is very open about his past, and he gets all the exclusive stories and things like that. And I really recommend watching this interview. Please do. And we also, of course, have been asking, well, why won't they talk about this story? And what's interesting is when I took Syria out of the title, I'll show you guys. So I had OPCW, Duma gas attack in the title, Syria in this title, and false flag in this title. And they did all right, but not really as good as I would hope. But the one where I titled it, Why Won't They Talk About This Story, which I get it, is a little clickbaity. And if you clicked on it, then it worked. It served its purpose. But that video did more, so I'm pretty positive that the algorithms are looking for people talking about OPCW, Syria, gas attacks, false flags, things like that. So that's all been going on, guys. There's been several different leaks coming from WikiLeaks, and then just in the last days, like 3 days ago, they released part 4. So we have, since October 23rd, you have the OPCW whistleblower panel on the Duma attack, which from April 2018, showing evidence of lies. Then on November 23rd, they released an internal OPCW email showing even further lies. Then December 14th, we had more OPCW Duma releases, and just days ago, part 4, which completely destroys their whole narrative. It has actual former toxicology meeting redacted meeting statements which detail just further lies. We'll go over it briefly. Today, WikiLeaks releases more internal documents from the OPCW regarding the investigation into the alleged chemical attack in Duma in April 2018. One of the documents is an email exchange dated 27th and 28th of February between members of the fact-finding mission deployed to Duma and the senior officials of the OPCW. It includes an email from Sebastian Braha, Chief of Cabinet at the OPCW, where he instructs that an engineering report from Ian Henderson, and Ian Henderson has been a central part of this story. They claim that he wasn't a part of the fact-finding mission, and that his reports, because he's been one of the people saying that this whole thing was not a gas attack for a while. They claimed, he wasn't even a part of our team. What do you mean? Where he instructs the engineering report from Ian Henderson should be removed from the secure registry of the organization. Please get this document out of the Documents Registry archive, and please remove all traces, if any, of its delivery, storage, whatever. The main finding of Henderson, who inspected the sites in Duma, was that the 2 canisters which were found, which you can see in this video right here, were more than likely manually placed rather than being dropped from a plane or helicopter. His findings were omitted from the final report. Another document released today is minutes from a meeting on June 6, 2018, where 4 staff members of the OPCW had discussions with 3 toxicologists, clinical pharmacologists, 1 bioanalytical and toxicological chemist, all specialists in chemical weapons, according to the organization's own meeting minutes. And the purpose of this meeting was to solicit expert advice on the value of exhuming suspected victims of the alleged chemical attack. According to the minutes, the OPCW team was advised by experts that there would be little use in conducting exhumations. The second point was to elicit expert opinions from forensic toxicologists regarding the observed and reported symptoms of alleged victims. More specifically, whether the symptoms observed in victims were consistent with exposure to chlorine or other reactive chlorine gas. According to the minutes leaked, quote, with respect to the consistency of the observed and reported symptoms of the alleged victims with possible exposure to chlorine gas or similar, the experts were conclusive in their statements that there was no correlation between symptoms and chlorine exposure. The CW team members wrote that the key takeaway message was that the symptoms observed were inconsistent with exposure to chlorine, and no other obvious candidate chemical causing the symptoms could be identified. I mean, could it be more fucking clear than that? The third document is a copy of OPCW email exchanges from the 20th to 28th discussing the meeting with the toxicologist. The fourth document is an email exchange from the end of July 2018 where it is stated that 8 OPCW inspectors deployed to Duma during the fact-finding mission should be excluded from discussions on the project. Except for one, only one member of the team that actually went to Syria was included in this final draft report. So it's just showing you more and more how much lies are going on, that false flags are happening all around us. And for those who thought that they were going to stop during Donald Trump or something, they haven't stopped. In fact, Trump, if he's as smart as guy as you guys think, if he's got Q and all this stuff, shouldn't he be calling this out? Interesting. And just for those who want some background, I'm an activist as well as a journalist, and I've been out there fighting against this for a while. Back in April 2018, when this shit first happened, me and my girlfriend, we hit the streets, hashtag no war, hashtag Syria, found this giant banner, put this up over the freeways in one of the busiest sections of Houston. Just a little simple form of street action activism to get out there and show people what's going on, because that's what you got to do, guys. I don't know if you realize this. I make videos to try to inform you, to educate myself, to share information, but the hope is that you'll be inspired to do something. When I first started waking up in 2009, 2010, I watched a documentary, I read a couple of books, and it freaked me out so much that I had to go out to the streets and talk to people. I felt inspired to take action. So that is what I'm hoping to do with you guys. So please, if you feel inspired by these stories or disturbed by them or whatever it may be, take action in some way. Again, we've been covering this for quite some time. You can go back to the original attack, April 2018. I did this video dissecting the Syrian conflict, which is a video examining my 2 articles, examining the evidence, examining the ground reports from Syria, which I wrote for Ben Swann's Truth in Media, examining the reports from people who are actually in Syria and how they conflicted with what we were being told in the media. So we did a big deep dive into that I really recommend you guys checking out. And then in addition to that, I also did this one, examining the evidence for chemical attack in Syria. And of course, this video dissecting the Syrian conflict looks at both of them. And if you may remember, even at the time, Secretary of Defense Mattis said that there was no evidence of a chemical attack, but they went ahead anyways. I put this article out in July 2018. New report finds no trace of nerve agent at site of suspected chemical attack. And, the information just kept coming out for those who were paying attention. And you know what? I even asked John Kerry, former Secretary of State, about the United States supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria and, what all that means. So I got a non-answer from him, of course. And just to let you know, guys, we've been on this for a while. We've been following this story since before this year, but now we have even further evidence of it being a lie, and I do think this is one of the biggest stories of 2019, and if we could get more people to pay attention, perhaps more people would see that the media helps prop up the war machine, and without them, the wars wouldn't happen. So we have to expose the mainstream corporate deadstream media, as we like to call them here, because they're dead, and everything they spew will only lead to death, distraction, and, complacency. So we have to expose them. How many of you guys remember a few years ago some activists tried to organize a march against the mainstream media? Well, it didn't really take off too well. People did some actions around the country. That's probably needed right now more than ever because of the attacks on independent media, because of the algorithmic pushing out of society, because of the bullshit that we have to deal with by trying to talk about real issues and being labeled conspiracy theorists, being labeled fake news, being demonetized, being flagged, being, just censored in so many ways. This story doesn't get anywhere. People don't hear about it. But it is one of the most important stories of 2019. And some of you will be like, yeah, we already knew this. But there's so many normies who don't know this. Just like they didn't know about the Epstein thing. This is your opportunity to get out there and to talk to them. To find a very comfortable, easily digestible way to communicate this message to them. Not to come overwhelm them and tell them, whatever kind of crazy shit you want to get into. Just to stick to the facts and to clearly show them that we're being lied to. And we have been lied to. So I'm going to continue to cover this story into 2020. I think it's one of the most important ones, and I would appreciate if you guys share this video for people who've never heard about this. And again, if you're just new to this topic, go back and watch our previous videos, including my interview with Tarak Haddad. I really, really, really recommend it. And one final thing, guys, if you want to support my work going into 2020, if you want to support my next documentary, I highly recommend and humbly request that you invest in my documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse, which you can sign up for right here. If you want to make a one-time contribution, that is very much appreciated. We're trying to hit $2,000 within 13 days, which will go towards paying my editor and paying me for my time for writing, narrating, researching, making a documentary. Anybody else, if you want to support, you can make a monthly contribution via Patreon or Subscribestar. All that money goes to fund our project. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Until tomorrow, when I bring you the #1 most important story of 2019, I hope you have a great day. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.